Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again for joining us this evening for our virtual open house for the proposed land use application at 515 Foul Bay Road. My name is Niall Paltiel. I'm here with Ascend Planning on behalf of the project team with GMC Properties. It is a pleasure to be here with you all this evening. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedules to join us on this project. Before we begin, I'd just like to respectfully acknowledge the territory in which this application is the Songhees lands, and as well, I'm presenting today from the WSÁNEĆ territory as well, and so just to provide that acknowledgement as we commence this application, and thank you all for sharing your interest today and for joining us for wherever you're from. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome our project team and share in this project application process as we begin our conversation with our neighborhood and our neighbors here. For today, just to introduce the proposal, we'll begin as we just started with an introduction to our neighbors. We'll introduce our project team as well as the experience that GMC Projects has here in the city of Victoria, specifically around both rental housing, providing missing middle housing, and with respect to heritage developments. As well, we acknowledge the historical and the heritage background on this project, as well as provide some context with respect to the lands that we're on, discuss some lessons learned from the previous application, as well as go through what our current proposal is, and then finally, we're going to leave any key questions or considerations to the end of the application, and have a discussion at that point. During that time, any applicant who's on the phone or on the call today will have the ability to raise their hand or participate in the chat and add to that discussion that we have. So again, thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to briefly sharing our application today. And then at the very end of this application, we do look forward to a discussion. But hopefully, like any good application, hopefully we do answer some of your questions as we go through our proposal summary today. If we can go to the next slide. So it's a pleasure to introduce our team, and for that I will hand things over now, if that's okay, to Jordan with GMC Projects.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Niall. My name is Jordan Milne. I'm the president and CEO of GMC Projects. I'm joined tonight by my partner Tony Kiptoo, Richard Gill, our development manager, Chris Winjack from Ladder Landscape Architecture, Nick Bray from Nick Bray Architecture, Niall Paltiel, who's just introduced the project and the application, Jeremy Jai, our arborist, and Will Paraboom from Victoria Design Group. And as well, actually a few others from our team that aren't mentioned here, Sarah McNeil from GMC Projects, and my brother and our partner as well, David Milne, is present with us this evening. So GMC Projects, heritage is a part of, is a sort of a fabric of who we are. And so we have always strived and looked for opportunities to be able to undertake meaningful heritage work. And this is an example of some of the heritage projects that we've had good fortune of being able to undertake in our past. On the left is One Alexander, which is a federally listed Class A heritage building in Gastown in Vancouver. And it was actually the site of the first ever City Hall of the City of Vancouver after the Great Fire of 1886. In the middle, before you see the Adelphi block, which you may recognize from the corners of Yates and Government Street, was a restoration and rehabilitation project of actually 3 heritage buildings that make up that corner that we completed in the fall of 2020. And on the right is a vintage building, being the Bell Apartments, which sits on the corner of Cook Street and Mears, and had suffered a fire in 2017, and the rental tenants were displaced. And we have fortunately acquired the property to restore the building and bring those units back alongside additional rental that we were able to create out of other space in the building. For some context of the property today, 515 Foul Bay, obviously it's on Foul Bay Road. It's just up the road from Fairfields, across the street from Margaret Jenkins Elementary. It borders and backs onto the Abkhazi Gardens. and is just a short distance from both the Gonzales Beach and the Fairfield Plaza. And really the site presents an opportunity to create a grove of much needed family-oriented housing and to secure existing rental within the Fairfield Gonzales neighborhood. One of the attributes about our application is really understanding and respecting the past. The existing manor on the home was built in 1910 and is a Samuel McClure design manor home. The home is not a protected heritage home, but the city would like to see that. And as part of our application, we're seeking out that opportunity in order to protect this existing heritage home, provided that the wording of the preservation bylaw works within the context of the existing insurance market. One of the key elements, although we're here before you today on September 21st of 2021, the conceptualizing of this plan really started back in September of 2020. And one of the first things that we wanted to do was to look at a failed application under a prior owner from 2017 that sought the creation of 3 new single-family dwellings surrounding the existing manor. And what we looked at was the feedback that was given from neighbors, from council, from members of the public around the contextual fit, around the impact to the tree removal on site, the minimal setbacks that were being provided, and the heritage influence in the design that did not exist at that time. Some of what we've learned has helped to inform what we're here to share with you today. A project that is livable in that we're proposing homes that are actually sized for families and provide up to 25% of the site area to be protected as a no-build natural landscape in perpetuity, thus creating tremendous on-site recreational opportunities. An application that's contextual to the heritage surrounding it, such that it respects and pays tribute to that without trying to mimic the heritage design and architecture. An application that's restorative in removing the invasive species and allowing natural landscape to be protected in perpetuity. That's diverse in its type of housing that it's aiming to provide through a combination and a variety of housing types between 1 and 3 bedrooms. That is secure in actually securing the existing rental, which is not secure. And we're doing that for a period of 60 years. And that is protective in retaining the existing heritage home. Part of looking at what would help to conceive our plan was looking at the alignment of existing city policy. And so before you are a few different municipal policies that our application is in support of. And this is specific to the City of Victoria's strategic plan around attainable housing objectives, its goals of creating new missing middle housing through the Victoria Housing Strategy, and the protection of existing rental stock as well through the broader Victoria Housing Strategy. Back in September 2020, when we really commenced the conceptualizing of the site, you see before you Revision A, which is really the first idea that we had conceived of the property, which would have included a cluster of 3 townhouse structures as you come up the driveway, and then 4 along the northern boundary and 4 along the eastern boundary. And one of the things we've wanted to do and listening to from the prior application is to try and lay as lightly on the land as we possibly can. And so we engaged very early on with our arborist in order to help inform how we go about minimizing the impact on existing trees, tree loss, and the ecosystem that exists within this property. And so you'll see between Revision A and Revision B, the main change is that along the north property line, the 4-unit structure is split into 2. And this is in direct response to separate ourselves from a tree of significance that you can see just in behind it, which is sort of a larger circle element. And then going further, we spoke with the city and met with their heritage staff, who informed us that having structures coming up the driveway for them was a challenge from a heritage perspective, being that the existing side of the home is really the only perspective of the home that is visible from the public realm. And there was concern about placing structures in an area that may impinge upon the views to the existing heritage structure. And so, as you can see in Revision C, those structures, those 3 units were then placed on the rear of the property, which is the space bordering up Kazi Gardens. Further to looking at that site plan, we have removed those 3 structures in recognition of trying to, again, maintain as light of a footprint on the land as we can and to minimize our impact. And so we have further brought back those 3 units to see the plan before you today, a plan that has effectively 9 townhouse footprints. And within those 9 townhouse footprints are contained 18 dwelling units, a 1-bedroom unit on the main floor and a 3-bedroom family unit on the upper 2 floors. At this time, I'd like to hand things over to our architect, Nick Bray, to speak towards further site context, how that's informed the architectural expression, and to walk through some of the floor plans before we get further along with some of our other consultant team.
Thank you, Jordan. I'm Nick from Nick Bray Architecture. We're working with Victoria Design Group on the design of this proposal. Our intent with this design was to tread lightly on the site and respect the massing and appearance of the existing building. The overall footprint of all the buildings is approximately half of the allowable site coverage, and the overall floor space ratio is only 0.3. Each of the 3 proposed buildings have smaller footprints and are lower in height than the existing building, making them appear subordinate to it. The location of the 3 blocks was driven by minimizing their impact on the existing trees, which Jeremy will talk more about in a minute. We're investigating innovative foundation systems like helical piles and sonotubes to mitigate damage to those tree root structures by allowing the building to float above them. There are 26 car parking stalls proposed and secure bike storage that will be provided for all residents across the site, housed within the basement of the existing building. Is it okay if we change the slide, please? Regarding the proposed building appearances, the aesthetic, we were very conscious of not designing a fake Disneyland style replica of that existing building, and instead respecting the scale, color, and materiality of the existing building. So seeing the existing building, of course, is there on the right hand side. It is effectively a black box sitting on a stone base. So we've replicated that same aesthetic with the proposed on the left hand side. Within that black box, you have white paneling with black trim, and again we have replicated that in a modern way on the proposed design. And the roof of the proposed design is red and black shingle, which reflects that of the existing building. We did introduce one further material. Actually, if you switch to the next slide there, please. You see on the left-hand side of the rendering is a shingle material, cladding material, which we put in there to respect and reflect some of the neighboring buildings, so some of the neighboring houses that have a similar shingle cladding as that. If we switch to the next slide, please. So here are the sketch layouts of the different units. As Jordan said, there's a total of 18 new units proposed, consisting of 9 3-bed homes over 9 1-bedroom suites, but they're all of various sizes, providing a range of size, configuration, and affordability options. Thank you very much. I'll pass it over to Jeremy.
Thank you, Nick. Good evening, everyone. My role in this project as the arborist has been to work with the proponents and the design team to try and understand the constraints and opportunities represented by the trees on the site and our neighbors. The site planning for this project, as Jordan has indicated, has evolved pretty significantly as a result of this. And what you see tonight is our best effort to nest the new homes as gently as possible into the landscape and surrounding urban forest. To get there, the number of new buildings has been reduced. The placement of the buildings and their configuration has been refined to reduce tree impacts where we can. Building elevations and foundation plans have been specifically designed to accommodate tree root habitat where it's critical, as have the driveways and parking areas. And as Nick indicated this includes the use of helical piles in deeper soils and sonotube footings where there's superficial bedrock to elevate suspended slab above the tree root horizon. Driveway and parking areas are designed with meaningfully permeable surfacing, which is essentially an ornamental rock crush, as opposed to stormwater pavers, to ensure that we get full infiltration of rainwater into those root systems below. And we're continuing to work with our civil engineer to route the underground services and utilities up from Foul Bay Road, away from the trees wherever possible. On the drawing, you'll see this summary table of statistics. So we're showing 103 trees in total, which include on-site and off-site trees. The on-site trees are by and large bylaw protected, which means all of the oaks, arbutus, we don't have any dogwood or Pacific yew, but these two species are protected from a very small size, 50 centimeters under the current bylaw. All other trees are protected from 30 centimeters in stem diameter at breast height, so 12 inches, which results in significantly more trees being protected than under the bylaw that was in place during the previous application. Clumps of large shrubs such as Portuguese and English laurel that meet the threshold for protection under the city's tree bylaw are included. And all off-site trees and hedges that border the site, regardless of size, are designated as protected. Maintaining screening to our neighbors has been a key guiding principle for the tree planting throughout the process. Of the 62 bylaw protected trees on the site, we're proposing the removal of 24 in order to make room for the proposed homes. 7 of these are mature Gary oaks. The remaining trees consist of 3 small young Gary oak, 1 arbutus, which is in very poor condition, and the rest are an assortment of volunteer plums, laurels, hawthorn, laburnum, and holly, which for the gardeners out there, you will recognize as mostly invasive species. 15 Gary oaks are preserved, along with 23 mature trees of other species. And we have 1 dead cedar snag, which has been adopted by a number of cavity nesting bird species and has been retained for its wildlife value. 29 trees are proposed for replanting on the landscape plan, so that when we are finished, this site will have more trees growing on it than it does today. A somewhat younger demographic profile with a more diverse range of age classes and significantly fewer invasive tree species. The site will continue to host more than 4 times the minimum population recommended for a lot of this size under the city's updated urban forest strategy and new tree bylaw. I think I'll leave it there. There'll be an opportunity for some question and answers later. So I'm going to introduce my colleague, Chris Winjack from Ladder Landscape Architects to take you through the landscape concept plan. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Jeremy. So the landscape design for this project focuses, sort of as Jeremy has already touched on maintaining and supporting the retained tree canopy and understory vegetation as much as possible and augmenting it with new planting in the disturbed areas of the site that will occur for the new homes to be built. The plant palette has been selected with an emphasis on native species with the intent of blending the new planting spaces into the existing areas of understory planting around the perimeter of the site that are being retained, and the landscaping present around the existing manor house. New planting areas are focused primarily in the areas directly surrounding the new townhome buildings, with additional planted areas running alongside the driveway that runs into the site from Fowl Bay Road. All the proposed required replacement trees are native tree species, so there are 24 total, and there are the addition of 5 more Japanese maple trees within the unit garden spaces, which augment that above the required number of tree species for replacement, or sorry, tree count, not tree species. The areas of existing vegetation will be rejuvenated through the removal of invasive plant materials and selective pruning of shrubs as necessary to ensure their long-term health and continued growth, so that we can really make sure that the existing understory that is there on the site will continue to thrive and be as healthy as possible. The project also utilizes a natural systems approach to stormwater management, which allows us to minimize the amount of engineered solutions that will be required. So as Jeremy touched on, a major component of the stormwater design for the site will be maximizing permeability on the site. Noting that it's an upland site that will naturally shed to the adjacent properties, it poses some challenges, some unique challenges for us. But I think that the strategy that we're employing will allow us to create soft solutions to deal with that stormwater in a really sensitive way, and allow most of it to be directly infiltrated right over top of tree roots, particularly the existing tree roots of mature trees, which is something that is not happening everywhere on the site at the moment. In addition to that, the retained canopies of those mature trees will also help mitigate direct rainfall on the site, reducing the impact of the immediate impact of large rainfall events on the site's surface. And by virtue of having more permeable paving on the site, we will also be limiting the amount of surface flow on the site, which will, then run down the driveway, etc. So the more we can keep on the site, the better. This kind of focuses largely on the central parking area, which features a permeable aggregate surface within the parking spaces and the drive aisles. That allows direct stormwater infiltration over a significant portion of the site, particularly because it will also allow us to take runoff from the new building roofs and deal with it within that area. It's notable this is an upgrade over the existing site condition, which is the paved driveway that circles the stand of Gary Oaks at the top of the hill, where a large portion of the mature root systems in that area are relying on pockets of infiltration that are kind of nestled between large areas of paving, and a large portion of them are just under impermeable surfaces where water cannot get to them very easily. So in this new proposal, the entire central courtyard is going to be a permeable surface, whether it be a planting bed or this aggregate surfacing. And as mentioned before, a major component of the landscape design is also the creation of the large no-build covenant area at the southeast corner of the site. The landscape design in this area will be largely limited to the planting of replacement tree species, notably Gary Oaks, as well as the creation of a narrow wood chip path, which will be sensitively field fit in that area following the current desire lines that run through it, allowing residents to enjoy and engage with the landscape there in a peaceful manner, while also working to preserve its most sensitive elements and ensuring that the areas of foot traffic are being directed to the areas that historically have had foot traffic, and we're not allowing it over the entire rock outcropping as a whole. I think that that's characteristic of the site design as a whole, and the intent of the landscape design to work to ensure that residents are able to enjoy and celebrate the natural attributes of the site, which are many, while preserving and protecting those attributes as much as we're able to. And with that, I'm going to pass you back over to Jordan. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chris. And thank you for that as well, Jeremy and Nick. In terms of the summary, one of the things I want to highlight is what we've listened to in terms of information from the prior application that helped guide our proposal, which was not to bring forward another application for more single-family homes. It was not to was to create opportunities for groupings of townhomes or cluster housing, was to respect the existing 7.5-meter setback to rooms with operable windows, was to consider building footprints with smaller plates to minimize tree impact, to consider permeable paving, and to find an opportunity to sit lighter on the land. The application before you today does that, and it does that in a unique way. By providing the opportunity for up to 18 new dwelling units and a diversity of those dwelling units. One thing that I failed to mention earlier is the intention of interlocking and the ability for some of these units to have an interlock door such that you can accommodate a larger family, a more diverse family type than just one that may be housed within a 1-bedroom home or even within a 3-bedroom home. This is a proposal that has the opportunity to protect rental within the existing manor for a period of 60 years. There is no displacement of tenants in order to develop this property. That means that none of the existing rental tenants are required to be evicted in order to facilitate this work. Our proposal provides for roughly 25% of the site, or a quarter of the site area, to be protected as a no-build covenant zone in perpetuity that Chris just showed the chip trail through, and I think would be a wonderful space to be able to recreate. The existing manor would be put on the Heritage Register pending the specifics of the preservation bylaw. The permeable paving on site allows for meaningful water infiltration and rainwater management on site. We're providing sensitive foundation methodologies to mitigate the conflicts with the roots, as Jeremy mentioned, and to be able to prevent further tree loss. And we're looking for an electrical vehicle allowance for all the parking stalls so that each parking stall would have the potential of having electric vehicle charging, with as well the possibility for on-site car share. And so we believe that we're proposing something that creates a unique opportunity and tries to strike a good balance in terms of the provision of new homes within the impact that it places on the land. And we look forward now to the opportunity for some discussion and question and answer. So I'll turn it now back to Niall to facilitate.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jordan, and from Jeremy, Nick, and Chris for sharing your various aspects of tonight's development application. One thing just to remind everybody is that this is still, we've had a preliminary meeting with the Fairfield Gonzalez Community Association. We will be going back into the development tracker and into a former community association meeting this fall, but this has not been submitted yet. We're still very early in the feedback process. And so these kind of meetings on site with neighbors and that kind of outreach is critical to us. And so again, before we get started in questions and answers and everything, I just wanted to thank you very much again, sincerely, to everybody for your time this evening and for joining us today. And so without further ado, you should all have on the bottom of your screen, if you toggle your mouse or touch your screen if you're on an iPad, the ability to raise your hand. So if folks or as well in the question and answer area, there is a chat function. And so please feel free to raise your hand, and I'll do my best to go to each one of you. So first off, we have the initial CY, and so I'm going to go now, and you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Oh, hi there. Thank you very much for your presentation. I've been very critical of many of them, and I have to say I'm a bit inspired by yours. One of my questions for you is, which I was really pleased to see you addressing, the Garry Oak and associated ecosystems. As you know, they're the most endangered in Canada, and it takes about 30 years for a Garry Oak to grow its very first acorns. So of course, many urban animals have to wait a really long time before they actually can get some food. And I wanted to know, you said there were 7 mature Garry Oaks and 3 younger ones. And then you mentioned that you're going to be planting more Garry Oaks to replace them. Are you going to be replacing 10 Garry Oaks?
I think I should slide that one over to Chris.
Yeah, Jeremy, I was just about to say I can answer that. We are in fact planting 10 Garry Oaks in the current proposal is for 10 Garry Oaks to be planted.
That is fantastic. The only thing that would make that even more golden was to have some camas going.
There's absolutely an opportunity in the Covenant area for some camas cultivation to occur. As I'm sure camas can be quite picky with where it wants to thrive, but within that space, it's definitely a golden opportunity for it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your question.
Thank you very much for your question. So I'll lower your hand now, and then if anything else comes up, please don't hesitate to raise your hand again. Thank you very much. Charles Gorey. You're now able to unmute yourself.
Okay. Oh, there we are.
There you are.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm looking at your plan here, and I like all your attempt at preserving the Gary Oaks, but the one thing that concerns me is the height. What is the total height of the townhouses? Are they 10-foot ceilings in each one of those? Are they, because most houses are putting in 9 and 10-foot ceilings. So how high are they, the townhouses?
Yeah, I can answer that one. So they're relative to the grade around them, they're lower than the existing building on the site. So the existing building is 11.6 meters, and the 3 proposed blocks range between 9.9 and 10.4 meters. So we're not going for crazy tall ceilings or anything like that, but it is they are designed to be, as I said, subordinate to the existing building, so appear smaller in massing and height than the existing.
That was one thing, Charles, that we heard loud and clear in reviewing the feedback from the previous developer's application, was that the concern over the height relative to the current building and of course the existing vegetation and surrounding properties was a significant concern. So we wanted to ensure that every new proposed townhouse would be under the height of the existing building.
Okay, that aside, my question is, they're clustered along my neighbor's property, and at 30 feet, they're basically peering in and using their lot as their view. And I find that, I know if I was living there, quite offensive to turn my yard into somebody else's view, because none of the neighborhood has that problem right now. So is there how many of them are along one? Looking at the site plan, it looks like there's about 7 of them are in a row along one boundary as I see it. Yeah, the ones on the right are those are, yeah, those ones. How many are on that right side? That's about 6 or 7, 8.
There's 7 units. So
okay, and then there's
14 units in total, so 7 and 7. Yeah.
So 2 of them are on the other side. Well, the people that have that property beside that now have these windows looking on them in perpetuity, which immediately in my mind devalues their property. I don't think somebody else's yard should be the view. And now, how close are they to the boundary?
Just over 7.5 meters to the
So about 20
windows.
Yeah. So yeah. So I guess the question is, it's difficult. I would find it very difficult to live beside those townhouses on the property adjacent. Well, that's my comment.
Sorry, Jeremy, you were going to add something?
Yes, I was just going to note that building 3, which is the southernmost of the 2 buildings that Charles is addressing, has on the neighbor's side a row of very mature Monterey cypress and a red cedar and a Gary oak, which really, I think, effectively screen the neighbors from that building. So I guess really the one to remain focused on is the northern one of the 2, which looks not so much directly towards their house as towards the backyard on the northern end. So yeah, just kind of feed that into the conversation.
And I think the other important thing to address here is just that under the existing zoning bylaw, a residential development could occur today within a 7.5 meter rear yard setback. And so these, while they are townhouses and not single family houses, they are existing or being proposed within the same setbacks as exist within the property. That being said, obviously, when we propose a rezoning, this is the chance to have those conversations. And that's why GMC and their, through Richard and Jordan and their project management team have been meeting with all neighbors of the surrounding properties and doing direct outreach, because we share your thoughts, Charles. We want to make sure that this is as acceptable an application as possible with all of those neighbors. So appreciate you raising that, and hopefully we've addressed your question and concern.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So next, I have a couple of comments in the chat. Have you, from Suzanne, the first comment to the group is, have you considered reducing the number of townhouses? The site coverage for buildings is too much for the site. So I don't know who, Jordan, I think you probably want to take that one first.
Yeah, I don't mind answering that question. So I appreciate that comment, Susan. And I think it's independent on what everybody's opinion of too much site coverage for the site is. The zoning provides for up to 25% site coverage within this specific zone. We're proposing a total, to my understanding, of 13% site coverage. So about half of what would be allowed under the existing site. And in addition, we're protecting 25% of the site area as a no-build covenant zone in perpetuity. And so I respect your comment, but I think that we're trying our best to try and constrain those footprints and to try and minimize the impact on the land. And I think by going 13%, that is a meaningful step into doing that. So I do appreciate that comment, but I would suggest that our approach to date has squeezed down those footprints, as you may have seen through the earlier revisions.
Thank you, Jordan. And next, Robin, I do see your hand raised. I have two questions from Eve first, and then I'll move to Robin. Eve, first one is, I'd like to know more about the parking and car situation. How many spots and how many cars do you expect? Is the driveway wide enough for two-way traffic and for emergency vehicles is the first question.
So I'd like to answer that. So we're proposing 27 parking stalls, which provides for one-to-one parking per unit. And then in addition, 4 additional parking stalls that may be comprised of a combination of visitor and or car share. In terms of two-way access, the existing access at Foul Bay Road is not very safe. And so we would be proposing to widen that into a double wide drive aisle, so that there is two-way vehicle access at the mouth of the property. An emergency vehicle being a fire truck, you can kind of see on the site plan here as to where it would be identified. The existing grade for the property is too steep for a fire truck to make it up the grade. And so what would happen in the case of an emergency is the fire truck would dead end there, and all of the new structures would actually be sprinklered as a result of the limitation of fire access. And then at that pinch point as well, is where it narrow from a two-way wide road into a 4-meter wide, which is a generous but limited to single access road up until you get to the top of the property.
Thank you for that question. Next, Robin, I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself as I see your hand is raised. So Robin Jones, there we go.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Yes, well, my questions are there. I have several. One is, I thought you had to, every time you remove a tree, you had to replace it with 2. Is that not appropriate at the moment? I mean, has the city changed that? Because that's what it was before.
Right. Yes, the city is requiring currently a 1-to-1 replacement ratio. They have added a minimum tree number, minimum number of trees for a given size lot. They have a table at the back of the bylaw for a lot of this size, which is roughly 5,000 square. I'm going to get caught here, meters or feet. 25 trees are required. So we have something in excess of 4 times the number of trees that the city is currently wanting people to adopt as a minimum.
Why did the city change that?
Good question. I don't know. You'd have to ask them.
Okay, my next question is, have you considered permeable asphalt?
Chris?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So we have considered a variety of permeable surfaces, asphalt, concrete, um, even aggregates that are bonded together with a sort of epoxy product. For the purposes of the site and keeping it as natural as possible, and allowing maximal aeration of the roots, etc., we feel that the aggregate is the best option at the moment, but everything is still conceptual, and certainly we can, we will continue to explore alternate materials down the road to make sure that we can really hit on the one that provides maximal use for residents, maximal ease of use, ease of accessibility, and also permeability for tree roots.
Okay, but what about the driveway that goes all the way up that's asphalt?
I believe that is required to be asphalt due to the grade. It's much too steep for.
I know, but can it be permeable asphalt?
It may be able to be. Permeable asphalt has a lower tolerance for use, so it wears faster, and we can certainly look into that. Absolutely.
Okay, another question is, would you show on the drawing how someone who's parked in the parking spots that are right in front of Mike's house, how do they go up and turn around? Would you have somebody show how that works?
I would need to get Richard, probably, who has control, to maybe show that.
Robin, a car that's parked here, which I believe is your question, because you referenced the one in front of Mike's house. Or I'm not sure if you're speaking.
Well, any
this
of the
area.
ones that are above Mike's house,
Right.
the ones above Mike's house that are they're facing uphill.
Yeah, in order to park them, assuming it's these ones, you would enter on Foul Bay Road and park. When you're coming out,
Right.
you would drive up into the site and do a turn and then go back down and exit the site. For a person parking in these, they would either reverse in and do the same thing to go out, or they would go up and turn around and come back and then exit the same way. And
Wow,
we've
that's
also
really
just
awkward.
run these. We've had a study done by a traffic management consultant, Watt Consulting, who we're working with in order to work out some of these finer details as well.
Okay, and where are the patio spaces for block number 2? On the landscape plan, it doesn't really show them.
So the block number 2 on the rear of the building, you can see there, it's the same color because it's actually a covered overhang. There is no at-grade patio space behind there.
Okay, well, is there a deck or something for the family?
Yes, there's a covered deck on the back of the houses there.
Okay. And my last question is, are there going to be electric hookups for scooters for the 1-bedroom units? Because it could easily be a senior or something that's using it.
Jordan, do you want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So at this point in time, there would be electric provisions for bicycles and vehicles in terms of like scooter mobility devices and how they would circulate on the property. We don't have any specific location for them right now, but that would be part of the further plan development and refinement as we go forward. And especially as we look towards accessibility as an element towards those at-grade units that have obviously the potential on varying areas of the site. One of the things to keep in mind, as we mentioned earlier, though, is by trying to take a sensitive foundation approach to some of these buildings by using helical piles or a similar methodology to minimize the impact to the root systems and to salvage as many trees as possible, we may be ending up building up one of the or more of these structures a foot or two off the ground. And so it may be a step or two up into one or more of those units. So depending upon where the geodetic grades lie at the end of the day, that'll help to determine what units are at grade in potentially that kind of formation that would enable an end user who may have those kinds of needs, and what their considerations might need to be.
Wow. Okay.
Thank you, Robin. We got a couple more in the chat, so I appreciate all your questions. And if something else comes up, please don't hesitate to raise your hand, and we'll certainly be able to continue the discussion. The next one is from Melina, and it is, what do you expect the cost of the 3-bedroom units to begin at?
So we don't know at this stage what the tenure of the new units is going to be. We know that we're going to be protecting the existing rental as part of our application. And so whether or not the new units are a combination of a strata and another tenure, whether they are all strata, and then what that looks like in terms of price point, I'm not sure. But we have sized the units to try and be as attainable as we possibly can. And so they range between about 1,200 and 1,400 square feet in terms of the family units. And so as a measure or as a metric of their size, they'll certainly not be an overly expensive unit in comparison to other forms of family housing.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And next, Suzanne asks, this lot and the rest of Queen Anne Heights represents the last of the Garry Oak Meadows in Victoria. Losing 10 in the understory would be a huge loss, I guess, as a comment, but I don't know if Jeremy or anyone else has any feedback on that.
I think the place to look for an evidence-based answer to that would be the updated urban forest canopy mapping that the City of Victoria, I believe, has just finished. So I can't answer that for you. I do know that there's sort of every effort made to try and minimize loss, and where we can't prevent it, to provide replacements. So it's an urban forest is both urban and a forest, so it's a matter of trying to balance. Yes, a broad range of values.
One thing I might want to add just to that discussion, Jeremy, and you can expand upon it if you think it's worthy, but through the preservation and the retention of 25% of the site area as a protected no-build zone in perpetuity, and a location that already houses multiple Garry Oaks and substantial Garry Oaks, and will house replacement Garry Oaks, it actually creates the opportunity to have that protected Garry Oak meadow within the property in perpetuity, while also in the interim accommodating additional housing. And so that's another, again, trying to balance those considerations.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan, for that. I think that's worth pointing out, that where the covenant area is located, it's to appetizer gardens, and the neighbors to the east have a large backyard in which they've done a significant amount of stewardship with their oaks. So you have a large contiguous area that has higher ecosystem benefits and attributes than you would find with, say, a single oak that was being preserved surrounded by pavement.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Next, both Joan and Monique later on have a similar question, so I'm going to just kind of summarize it, and I hope to capture this correctly. One of the visuals, I guess, at the beginning in the slideshow seems to kind of suggest that the city has asked for a higher density of development than the previous application. And so are we able to help just correct or work through the justification for the land use decision and why we're doing a townhouse design as opposed to the previous application?
Yeah, so I'll speak to that. So the city didn't use the language. We were requesting a higher density application. But as I mentioned earlier, that they would be looking for potentially a cluster of housing, or groupings of townhomes. That effectively the direction was for more attainable family housing, not for large single family homes that would be multi-million-dollar homes limited to the benefit of a few. And so that's really where that drove from. And then further to that, really the policy that has been developed subsequent to the last application from 2018 onwards relative to the City of Victoria's strategic housing policy, and more recently their missing middle housing policy, and the recognition of a dire need for more family-oriented housing, and specifically ground-oriented family housing, where the City of Victoria has fallen woefully short in the past years in terms of its delivery of that form of housing. And so really the sort of a combination of elements is what led to the formation that you see before you tonight.
Thank you. Next one is, with 27 cars on the property, how do we ensure that the emission, like that we're helping meet the city's climate leadership targets, and that the emissions are still met, or are not overdone?
I think looking at densification in a neighborhood that is walkable and cyclable. I mean, this property has, if I'm not mistaken, a 91 cycle score. And so encouraging at-grade cycling, storage space, electric bicycle charging, and potential for car share. Those are all measures under which we believe will help to change transportation methods. But by having people closer where they can actually walk to services, walk to Margaret Jenkins across the street, walk to the beach, these enable people to reduce their car use. So those who may have had a 2-car lifestyle are able to reduce that into a 1-car lifestyle. And so we have to think of it on the macro perspective holistically as a region, and this allowing housing for somebody who may be in Langford commuting on a daily basis, or in another more distant geographic region within the CRD.
Thank you. And then the second question from the same individual, how do we ensure that there is not a lot of rock blasting on the site?
So we've done that by staying out of some of the high sensitive areas. You can see on the existing site plan before you, the area, the blue line that's defined there, that has been those townhouses have been carefully placed to stay out of that really high density rock area. And then as well, to try and minimize our impact on the remainder of the site by using foundation techniques, where maybe we're going to end up building up instead of trying to go down, which would require further blasting.
Thank you, Jordan. Next, M. Fenger. I'm just going to unmute you here, and you now have the ability to unmute yourself and chat.
There we go. This is
there you are.
Yeah, this is about the third time that I've seen this. It's taken a while to sink in what the proposal really is, and I think a lot of the people on this call are just looking at it maybe for the first time. And the more I looked at it, the more concerned I became. I own the property that's shown on the plan, and I share the property and the driveway with 515. So my concern is the number of parking spaces immediately outside my place, and Robin mentioned the turnaround. Right now, that's fairly nice area. I would like to see, I guess, the number of units reduced somewhat, the number of land taken up in parking spaces reduced. And I think that the current zoning on panhandle lots is 1 story, and this is 3. I know that we've talked to some of the neighbors. We're not against development, but this is a very large, very big development. And my question, I guess, is will you consider reducing the height of the buildings? Because when I look at it, they're right up into the canopy, even of some of the trees that are supposedly going to be retained. So I looked today at the Roto development, which is 3 stories. Across Foul Bay here is 2 stories. And that's reasonable. But this 3 stories is they may be lower than the main house, but they're still very tall for the site. So if and we had a fairly good meeting with the neighbors, and there was a lot more detail. I guess also retaining the circular driveway and reconfiguring the driveway and removing one of the buildings would probably be, I think, much more suitable to the site. So I just want to register for the record for the other neighbors, and I'm sorry that you've chosen not to show us who's on the call. But from my point of view, I'm in favor of development, but not this particular development. So a little too tall, a little too dense, a little too many parking spaces, a little too hard on the ambience of the neighborhood.
Thanks for your feedback, Mike.
Thank you very much. And the next question, from Charles, what is the overall size of the property?
The property, sorry, I should check to make sure I wasn't on mute. The property is 1.2 acres.
And then from Lynn, what are the next steps for you bringing this proposal forward?
So the next steps in the process would be submitting a pre-application to the City of Victoria and to continue further engagement with the community and potentially having a community and land use committee meeting with the neighborhood at some point later this fall to elicit further feedback before informing a formal proposal.
Okay. So there, I will say there are a few comments in here that will get recorded as part of this, and so I do appreciate that. I just want to make sure that questions are able to be answered first. So I am seeing this, but as I read through the comments here as well, I will note them. Some people obviously registering just as far as concern with respect to height, Gary Oaks, and general density, but then also there's a number of people in here that acknowledge that this type of housing is needed within the City of Victoria, and the typology of housing is something that is important to provide that kind of diversity. So we will follow up with all of those and make sure that they're recorded. Next up, I have Karen Ayers raising her hand, so I will allow you to unmute yourself now. There you go.
Mute. Yeah, I just have a question. Actually, like Mike, I've looked at this presentation a few times and registered different and additional things when I look at it. The building to the north appears to have, at the back of it, it goes into the 7.5 meter setback. Is that just balconies, or is there living space below those balconies for the 1-bedroom suites? And if so, what kind of space is it? Habitable rooms or non-habitable rooms?
Yeah, maybe I can answer that one for you, Karen. So in the very northern component of the two, I don't know if Richard, maybe you can move your mouse over that area. The two, yeah, just right there. So the decks for the rear units have an enclosed habitable space below without operable windows facing towards the to the east. And so there is habitable space, Karen, underneath of that deck, but without windows facing to the side yard. And so it is consistent with the existing zoning regulation relative to the 7.5 meter and 4 meter setbacks between structure and operable structures with operable windows.
The regulation doesn't say anything about operable windows. It says to walls with windows and defines actually what a habitable room is. And unless it's a bathroom or a storage space or a kitchen, it seems to me that that is within the definition. I don't know where the opening windows came from because that's not what the regulation says. But anyway, I'll leave that with you. It was just a question I had about noticing that. And then the building over to the, well, left, I guess. I don't know, is that building 2? Or yeah, that. So that's on quite a slope. So it looks like there are stairs going to the front of those townhouses. That's actually a duplex, I guess, not a townhouse, but are there stairs going to the front there? i.e. is that going to be built up to be kind of on the top of the rock or?
Maybe we'll just go to we have the elevation for that structure so you'll see here. It's built into the grade. So the first unit as you come up the road is lower than the unit above it. There is, as you can see, a set of, in the one case, 3 steps or 4 steps, and the other 5 steps in order to get to the actual grade of the main floor of the structure. And that's, again, as a mechanism of trying to work within that existing landscape and minimize blasting or going down into the land.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Karen. And I will add as well that I will send a follow-up email following tonight's open house, and I will include both my contact information as well as Richard from GMC Projects contact information. So that way, following tonight, if you have any additional comments, questions, concerns, or would like some additional information, or you're, wake up at 2 in the morning and say, oh, hey, I forgot to ask this question, we will be available to provide that feedback. And like we said in the process, still working on refining this submission prior to bringing it forward to the City of Victoria. So again, I see as well just some people just additionally adding their feedback as well, and so we do appreciate that. I do have a question here from Bob. How are the height of the buildings measured? Is it the midpoint of the roof line?
Sorry, it's the top of the roof. If you're talking about the top of the building from average grade around that particular block.
Thank you. And then Bob has a question, and this might be either Jeremy or Chris. Am I correct that the landscape shows that the 24 protected trees would be removed? And if so, what size trees are provided, or what type of trees provided as the replacement offering?
I can field that one. Yeah, so we're currently proposing native tree species for all 24 required replacement trees, and 5 more additional trees on top of that. The size of the tree depends largely on the species being proposed, because for commercial nurseries, they simply don't stock everything at the same size. So typical replacement size would be 6 centimeter caliper, which is approximately 15 feet, between 12 and 15 feet, depending on the species and how fast it grows. The Gary Oaks would go in at a little bit of a smaller size, just because they are not typically grown to that size in a nursery. They're available at a smaller size, essentially, due in part to the fact that they are quite slow growing. And then we have some vine maples, which are a multi-stem native tree. And so they, being a multi-stem tree, would not be a 6 centimeter caliper size, because that would be massive. So they are probably going to be in the 3 to 4 centimeter caliper range per stem.
Thank you. And one final question just from Bob, questioning just what exactly the height is on these buildings, and that was discussed earlier, and the heights do vary based on the building themselves. And so The existing building, as we mentioned, is a total, the existing heritage building is a total of 11.6 meters, and the 3 new buildings range in 3.9 to 10.4 meters. But it does depend on the building themselves.
I'll just
So-
to correct on that, it's 9.9 to 10.4
Oh,
meters.
9.9, sorry, my chicken scratch was incorrect, so I do apologize. Thank you very much, Karen, and we appreciate your feedback. And thank you, CY, as well. We appreciate your positive feedback as well. Any final comments, questions, concerns? Karen asks, how tall are the Gary Oaks within the driveway circle? Are we familiar with that number off the hand?
Vaguely about 12 to 14 meters, depending on the tree. So they crest just over the existing building there.
Thank you. Oh, and I see Janet, you have raised your hand. I will allow you to talk here.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, there you are. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So basically, this is, though it doesn't fit the city's definition of a panhandle lot because of when it was created, it is essentially a panhandle lot. And because of that, it's got an extreme impact on all of the surrounding houses. And that's why we have such strict regulations for panhandle lots, is because of the impact they have on all the surrounding neighbors, because you're basically building in people's backyards. And that's why this is a panhandle lot by definition. I mean, it's in a panhandle, even though it doesn't have the regulations that panhandle lots have because of when it was created. It does fit the definition of a panhandle lot per se. So I would like to see a developer respect the regulations of panhandle lot because that's what you're building on. And those regulations allow for one house, 25% site coverage, 1 story, not 3 stories. And the reason for that is the impact on the neighbors. My other concern is that the topography of this site is such that it's not just the height of the buildings that's the concern. It's where those buildings are in relation to the neighboring houses. Because if you put a 3-story building way up on a bluff above all the neighbors, you've essentially created a 5-story building. So you have to take into consideration the topography of the site. And if the mansion is below some of these houses, then it doesn't matter if it's actually taller. It's going to look shorter. But I'm concerned about the surrounding houses that now are going to have 3-story buildings looming way above them because of the topography.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your feedback, Janet, and I think that the relationship with the existing buildings is certainly, your existing residences, including the building on our property, is definitely something we take into consideration, as well as the height of the lot, the topography, and the fact that the existing house is an existing rental property already with multiple families using that access. And so the size and other considerations all form part of this, as well as the City of Victoria's climate and housing needs assessment. So take your point that there are certainly considerations that are provided in here, but at the same time, we're working with the city to balance a number of different identified needs and objectives. And I think that the relationship to these buildings and our neighbors and the surrounding area will be something that we will continue to demonstrate both with renderings and additional architectural studies as we go forward. So again, thank you very much. And this is, the placement of homes and relative to our neighbors and the existing topography and site is something we take very seriously. And we really appreciate that consideration and concern.
Niall, if I could add to that, maybe we could just switch to the landscape plan on the property, because one of the things we've been careful to do, Janet, is to minimize the opportunities for overlook where we can and maintain existing mature vegetation. And so as you talk about grade changes, most substantial grade change that really exists on the property is as you come up the driveway. And so as you see, Richard, if you could cover the 2-unit building on the northwest corner. So that's really the structure that is at the highest grade relative to sort of the street, which is sort of the lowest grade of the property. And there's some substantial existing mature trees that are existing and being retained within that side yard setback, as well as new ones that are being planted. And then we've been very careful to not locate windows to overlook their side yard. And so effectively there'll be a green screen, a natural green screen that already exists to create a substantial visual buffer. And then as well, a lack of sort of overlooking windows in order to create a privacy concern. So as Niall mentioned, we're trying to balance various objectives and certainly take that privacy implication and implication to our neighbors seriously. And that's one of the methods that we've taken, at least to date, within the conceptual plan. And I don't know if Chris would have any or Jeremy would have anything further to add on that.
I can speak a little bit to not so much the height for the upper screening the upper floors, but certainly within the setback from the property lines in the areas where the new houses are, we are proposing pretty significant understory planting and garden height trees. So anywhere from at maturity, looking at 20 to 25 feet high. So there will be some screening provided by that, and we are obviously sensitive to the neighboring property and wanting to mitigate it as much as we can through vegetative buffering.
Thank you. Next up, I have a question from Lynn. So I will allow you should be able to unmute yourself. Ready, go.
Hi.
Hi.
It's good to hear that you're continuing to work with neighbors and the city on this proposed plan. It's the first time I've seen it, and I think it is got its challenges still. I think it's got a huge challenge with the parking. I think it does have a huge impact on all surrounding neighbors, including myself. And I think that the density doesn't fit well with this actual site. And I think there's too many protected trees being proposed for removal. So I think I think you're hearing that from a lot of people. So I think there's a lot of work to go still on this proposal. So I was just wondering, for the next version of it, is that the version you're planning to show at the Fairfield Gonzalez community meeting, or when would we see a next version that reflects some change based on the comments that you've heard from tonight and previously to tonight?
So thanks for that question and your comments, Lynn. So we're taking feedback as part of that is yours tonight, just as you provided. And we'll be determining basically as we conclude this evening, and we've concluded several meetings in the prior weeks and even prior months, what changes we feel are necessary to make in order to try and balance all of the objectives that we're trying to meet. And so I can't give you a certain date as to sort of when a further revised plan would come forward. But certainly we're taking all feedback into consideration. And as a further plan evolves, we'll be communicating that within the neighborhood.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And now I have, I believe it's Mike again, just as a follow-up here, your hand is raised, so you do now have the ability to unmute. M. Fenger.
It's not working.
Oh,
Hi.
there you are.
Okay, yeah, I clicked it, but it didn't go. Traffic flow has changed since City of Victoria has closed Richardson at Foul Bay, and there's more traffic coming down Foul Bay than we've experienced. And it's, I think parents dropping kids off is a pretty busy time. And so I'm concerned about traffic and the entry of traffic and so much new density in this area as proposed. And again, I'm, as you know, advocating for development, but not as a high density a development, and traffic and certainly safety is a consideration. I know that there's going to be a wider driveway on Foul Bay, but it's going to be, from my point of view, my little house in the drawing there, at least a 400% increase in traffic from what I'm experiencing from the existing renters in the house. So that's, I don't know. I guess this is just the message to the group is we're looking for ways that you can make good on your development. We're certainly looking for lower density and less height.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. We've definitely received your feedback this evening on the definitely on just the impact to the density. I think that there is mixed feedback, obviously on density and what the impact to that is within the local neighborhood. I think it is important to take a look at where this site fits within context of the overall neighborhood, and also, as you mentioned, the elementary school across the street, it is one of the highest number of out of catchment students traveling to and from school of any elementary school within Greater Victoria. Or within the City of Victoria, I should say, or Victoria School District. Lots of families coming to and from this catchment because of the lack of attainable housing within the area. And so are we going to say that this development is going to solve everything? No, but certainly when it comes to teachers, educational professionals, and families, housing that is attainable within an area where housing has become very, very expensive is a critical piece that we know is important to many people on this call, and is important to GMC projects as well. And so I really do think that yes, we hear your points with traffic. I do not believe it would be a 400% increase, and we can refer back to Watt, our professional traffic engineering consultants, to make sure that we do have those numbers when we do move forward with our final proposal going to council. But ultimately, I think that bringing families closer to some of those key amenities like the school, like shopping on Fairfield Road, and other key amenities, that is part of the kind of the bigger master plan that the city puts forward, and a key property like this one is essential to delivering that plan within these modest incremental steps. So thank you very much again for that feedback. And I'm going to turn it over now to Virginia, first time caller. You should be able to unmute yourself now. Hello, Virginia. You just have to select unmute the microphone. Hello, Virginia. Try that again. Sorry, Virginia, your hand's raised, but I can't seem to unmute you. I will say this is the first time we've had this issue, so that's pretty good for a Zoom meeting. No, I will, again, I'll say this to Virginia and I'll say this to everyone. I cannot hear you, but again, we will follow up with our contact information following this call to make sure that any feedback is recorded and we get a chance to answer any questions coming out of today's meeting. I'm not seeing any other hands up or questions, so this will be